Welcome back to Old Charles. Today we are looking at a coin that many of you might have in your pocket change or in an old jar of coins left by your grandparents. We are diving deep into the 1978 Hong Kong 20-cent coin. Let's get right into it. First, let's look at the specifications. This coin is from 1978. It is from Hong Kong obviously, and it is a 20-cent piece. It is made of nickel brass. It has a diameter of 19.50 millimeters and it weighs about 2.59 grams. The edge of the coin is plain. Now the design. On the obverse side we have the iconic portrait of Queen Elizabeth II. This is the third portrait design used on Hong Kong coinage. It was introduced in 1975 and was used until 1984, so this 1978 coin sits right in the middle of that period. The portrait was designed by Arnold Machin. If you look closely you can see the Queen facing right. She is wearing the Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara. Around the portrait you will see the inscriptions Elizabeth II in English, and on the bottom you will see Hong Kong in Chinese characters. Flipping the coin over to the reverse side we see the main design, which is a floral pattern. This is a Chinese hibiscus flower. It is a very elegant and simple design. The denomination 20 is prominently displayed in the center with the word cents written below it in English. On the top arch you have the Chinese characters for Hong Kong, and on the bottom arch you have the year 1978 written in English. The design is clean and very representative of the era. So the big question: what is the value of a 1978 Hong Kong 20-cent coin? Is it worth a fortune? Should you be rushing to check your coin jars? Well, let's talk about that. In terms of mintage, the 1978 20-cent had a very high mintage figure. Millions upon millions of these coins were produced. They were made for everyday circulation. They are not a rare coin by any stretch of the imagination. Because of this high mintage, the value for a circulated coin is very low. If you have a 1978 20-cent that has been in circulation, it is probably only worth its face value, or maybe just a tiny bit more to a collector who needs it to fill a date set. But essentially in circulated condition we are talking about a value of maybe 20 to 50 cents, if that. Now if you have an uncirculated coin, one that is in brilliant mint state with no scratches, no wear, no fading, then the value is a bit higher, but still not high. An uncirculated example might fetch between 1 and 3 dollars on a good day. The reason it is not more valuable is simply because there are so many of them in pristine condition that were saved in rolls and mint sets. So unless you have a rare era variety, this is not a coin that is going to pay for a new car or even a nice dinner out. It is a very common modern coin. Speaking of errors, it is always worth checking any coin for potential mistakes made during the minting process. For the 1978 20-cent there are no major widely known error varieties that command huge premiums, but that does not mean they do not exist. Look for things like off-center strikes, double strikes, or die cracks. If you find a significant error, it could increase the value, but for the most part this is a standard issue coin. So why do people collect it? Well, the 1978 Hong Kong 20-cent is a key coin for people building a date and mintmark series of Hong Kong decimal coins. It is also collected by people who are interested in coins of the British Commonwealth or coins featuring Queen Elizabeth II. It is a piece of history, a snapshot of Hong Kong before the handover back to China. It represents a specific time and place. In summary, the 1978 Hong Kong 20-cent coin is a beautiful but very common coin. Its numismatic value is minimal, but its historical value as part of Hong Kong's coinage history is undeniable. It is a great coin for a beginner collector to start with, because it is inexpensive and easy to find. Okay, so we just talked about the value of independence from Britain. It was looking outward to the global market, not just back to London. This is the immediate backdrop for our 1978 coin, but there's more. In 1974 Hong Kong established a new financial institution called the Hong Kong Association of Banks. This was a step towards a more formal and regulated financial system, and crucially it was in 1974 that the Hong Kong dollar was finally allowed to float freely on the international market. So when our 1978 20-cent coin was minted, it was part of this new modern and confident monetary system, a system that was less tied to Britain and more integrated with the global economy. The coin itself is a product of this era of financial reform and growing economic power. Now let's look at the design itself. The portrait on the obverse is the third portrait of Queen Elizabeth II by Arnold Machin. This portrait was introduced to Hong Kong coinage in 1975. It is a more mature and softer portrait than the earlier ones, but by 1978 what did this portrait represent? Hong Kong was a British Crown colony in name, but the reality was shifting. The cultural identity of Hong Kong was becoming distinctly Cantonese and international. At the same time, the Queen's portrait was a legal formality, a vestige of a system that everyone knew was not permanent. The real soul of the coin is on the reverse, the beautiful Chinese hibiscus flower. This design was introduced in the Great Decimalization and redesign of 1975. Before that, the coinage often featured the British crown and other imperial symbols. The move to a neutral beautiful local flower was a significant softening of the colonial imagery. It was an attempt to create a coinage that felt more local, more Hong Kong. This was important for public acceptance, and it subtly reflected the changing political winds and what winds they were in 1978. The future of Hong Kong was the single biggest question hanging over the city. The new territories, part of the colony, were on a lease from China that was due to expire. 1997. Secret and not-so-secret negotiations between London and Beijing were already underway by the late 1970s. Everyone in Hong Kong knew that the status quo was not going to last. The 1978 coin was minted in this atmosphere of uncertainty and anticipation. It was business as usual. On the surface, the economy was booming. Hong Kong was becoming a manufacturing and financial powerhouse, but beneath the surface was a deep anxiety about what would happen when the lease ended. So the 1978 20-cent coin is a snapshot. It is a coin from the peak of late British colonial Hong Kong after the financial reforms but before the political settlement. It was used by a population that was building a modern metropolis, all while looking over its shoulder at the giant to the north. After 1978 the story continues. The Mackin portrait was used until 1984, and then a new portrait by Raphael Maclaf was introduced. But the biggest change came in 1992 when the portrait of the Queen was removed from all circulating coinage. Ahead of the 1997 handover, the hibiscus flower remained, but the Queen was gone. So when you hold a 1978 20-cent coin, you are not just holding 20 cents, you are holding a piece of that specific moment in time. It represents Hong Kong's economic confidence, its unique East meets West culture, the fading symbol of the British Empire and the looming presence of modern China. It's a coin of a transition period, a calm before the storm of negotiations that would lead to the joint declaration and the eventual handover. It's common, yes, but its history is profound. It is a relic of a Hong Kong that is now gone, a bustling, confident colony on the edge of an uncertain future, and that is why we collect these coins, not just for their metal or their face value but for the stories they tell about trade, empire, culture and the flow of history itself.